Hey everyone. So this is another unreal moment in my life. I mean, I'm kind of living the dream, making a living out of my hobby, meeting all these cool people. Zack Snyder, Burt Ward, talking to Julie Newmar, Linda Carter, working with Michelle Pfeiffer, Danny DeVito. I mean, mind blown, right? But so last year, for the 1989 Batmobile, we had a couple of interviews, and I finally got approval to show you this one, where we interviewed Patrick Tatoupolis, who worked with Zack Snyder, of course, on these two Batmobiles, as well as an interview with Ash Thorp, who worked on the 2022, which is right there behind me, right there. Oh, this is hard to do. So it was a great interview, talking about what it's like to be responsible for carrying on the design of the iconic Batmobile, giving it your own spin, and then of course with the huge legacy of the this one, the 1989, of course. So we enjoyed it immensely, and I'm sure you will too. So enjoy. Welcome to the stream, both Patrick and Ash. It is an insane pleasure and a bit surreal. I mean, I traced it back, and I think on all the three Batmobiles that are between the two of you, might have worked on them for about 4 years intensely. So I'm
Wow.
very familiar with all that work. And thank you for being with us to do the interview for the little Batmobile book that we are currently making. Julian Caldow, the designer of the 1989 Batmobile, hopes to join us too, but he's currently still stuck at set. Again, surreal that I'm saying this.
Awesome.
But Patrick, you are at your parents' house in Paris. Is that correct?
Exactly. I was actually just came back from shooting a commercial in Greece. I stopped to Paris.
Oh,
I do that every time, and I'm on my way to home in the States.
ah,
Mm.
excellent, excellent. And Ash working until 5 in the morning and then waking up for this 9 a.m. call. uh,
Typical.
oh my God. So anyway, let me introduce you to Aryeh. He is the writer of the book we are talking about. I'll just shut up now and listen to you. If you have any questions for each other, even though you do know each other now that you are working together on a project you might want to talk about later. Anyway, I'll hand over the reins to Aryeh, and thank you for being with us for this. I love it.
Thank you
Yeah.
for having
So
us.
thank you. I have to be honest. I've done a lot of interviews over the years. I was a music journalist for a really long time, and I'm slightly intimidated to talk to the two of you. I mean, it's the Batmobile in particular is very important to me in all its iterations. And I mean, I've been a Batman fan, I'd say for a good 3 decades. So the what you have contributed, the two of you, to pop culture is enormous, and we're really excited to have you both here. And I know, Patrick, you're taking time out of your family time, so it means a great deal to us for to have you here. So thank you both.
Well, my pleasure. I mean, you won't make too much of a big deal about it. I just want to make sure you knew. I was so good. No, 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 please. It's a real treat. It's great to be here with Ash as well,
Mhm.
who I really admire. And this is fantastic. I'm very excited. I wish I had more time. That's the only thing I'm going to say.
So let's
Anyway,
get right into it. If we don't have a lot of time, let's get right because we have a lot to talk about. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was specifically the 1989 Batmobile, and I wanted to ask the two of you your first memory of seeing this vehicle and what kind of impact it had on you. I know it was very important to a lot of people in different ways, and I was wondering how it resonated with the two in your particular.
Mm. Please, Patrick, go ahead.
seriously? Well, listen, I'm a bit of a special case. I'm not gonna lie. I came from France, So in France, the culture is slightly different. I come from the culture of comic books and things like that. You guys are European jurists, so
Mhm.
Batman was for me a very mystical thing, but I'd never seen much about it. I was not following the comic books, and I saw that Batmobile, and really loved it from the beginning. But the thing is, to me, is as the years went by, I started to discover how powerful that design was, and now how inspirational it was. I mean, I'm going to go back in a second, going back to my Batmobile, the one I did for this for Zack Snyder. There's definitely gigantic reference to this one. The fact that the cockpit is further on the back and things like that, the long like Corvette kind of vibe, all that stuff was inspiration that stayed with me. And I loved it because he had the perfect balance of height and width and length. It felt super elegant. There's too much of things sometimes. There's too little. I thought this car just anchored us in an incredible design, and at that point, we all got inspired. I'm sure, Ash, you're gonna say a little things like that we're so inspired by it. It's actually intimidating when someone asks you to do one, and you hope that they're going to tell you to take a different route. The best thing that can happen. Yeah, that was my thing.
Yeah.
It has such a perfect ratio. It's like illustration and movement, and the presence it had in the film had me awestruck as a child. And it's one of those really kind of dominant moments in cinema memory for me. So yeah, the task to actually fulfill that same role is, I'm hoping that they were wanting a different role, because I felt that was so well done.
Exactly.
The ratios, the form, the presence, the essence of the car, how it fit Tim Burton's vision, the character in which it took over for the film. It was just, I can still remember the feeling of seeing it for the first time, and it had a lasting impact on me. To this day, when people ask me my favorite of them all, I always say that one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You said something, as you said, this is definitely a character. It's not just a vehicle in a movie, it's a character.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to that because, as you know, I'm not like really truly a car designer per se. I'm more of a creature guy. And to me, those things I look at them the same way. So, they're creatures to me. They're creatures of mechanics and things. So that one was already a creature for me. This is probably why I got seduced by it in the first place. It felt more than just a car.
It's so interesting that you say that, Patrick, because when I think about the different vehicles and what they represent and how they look, when I think about the '89 Batmobile, I think of like something very primal, something that feels very like Jungle Cat, like something that feels very sexy and sleek. When I look at your respective vehicles, I see Ash, I see something that feels very ghoulish, almost like a ghost. And Patrick, I see something like monsterish, like almost like beastly and formidable, kind of like almost like a Frankenstein presence.
Wow.
So it was really interesting that you're saying that they're characters to a certain degree, because in essence they are in their respective movies. They are literal characters.
Yeah.
I'm curious about when you approach a project that has such a storied history versus taking on something that's fresh and new. You mentioned, Patrick, about being maybe perhaps slightly intimidated by the project. I'm curious, what's your, like, literally day one? What do you do when you take on a project like this that has as much backstory as the Batmobile does?
Well, I think I'm still, after all these years of work in the industry, I'm still very naive. And I think the reason why I'm actually jumping on projects like that is because I don't completely think it through. And I jump, you have to design a new Batmobile, so I'm on it. And then only after you start working on this thing and start understanding the implication, that you start thinking, well, okay, now. And because those objects are very much going to be how the audience respond to it. I mean, we're designing for our director. The director, first of all, the reason those Batmobiles are so different is because the directors are quite different as well. Not forget that we design their vision.
Yeah.
Whatever we bring to the table, it's really their vision. So, to a certain extent, that director drives the machine, and you are one of the tools they have with them to create an aspect of it. I don't want to be talk too much. I'm just saying, but thing for me is when I came back from 300, second 300, and Zach told me if I wanted to design the new movie, Batman versus Superman, I said, okay, this is Man of Steel versus Dark Knight. He said, no, we have our own Batman. I was like, wow, because of course, immediately I thought, he means a new Batmobile. I went to a cafe and I drew the Batmobile quickly without, really not the way it should maybe be designed. I just drew the shape of it. I drew the form and came back, and that was it. And after that, I had to work with very talented people to make sure it looked the way it was meant to look. But it's very naive. It seems insignificant. I was going to a Starbucks and I drew on a Starbucks napkin. But, maybe it's good to be a little naive like that. I think it helps.
Yeah. And
I don't
Ash,
know.
I would love to hear your take on this as well. But just as an aside, when we interviewed Julian, he had a similar attitude about it. When Anton first asked him if he wanted to have a crack at the Batmobile, he was like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I mean, sure." I don't think he understood also the implications of what that meant and how important it would be to so many people. But Ash, I would love to hear about your day one and how you approach this project. And I've seen interviews with you and sort of like you almost had this confidence about you when it came to taking on the Batmobile. Where I think I heard a story where you met Matt Reeves and you're like, I'm going to do this. Like I'm doing this.
Yeah, actually, it was a conversation that I had with my production designer. I had not met Matt Reeves, and so it was more or less him and I had this wonderful conversation. And James Chinlin was his name, and he's awesome, and he was the one that gave me the opportunity. And when I asked him the questions, when you enter into this process of making a film together, you're in service to the director's vision, and you're in service to the director. And it's a small audience at that point. It's you, the artist, the director, and potentially a couple other teammates potentially attached to that. So you're just focusing on fueling that fire internally. And it was almost like there's been a few moments in my life where I'm like, I'm on the right quest. I know exactly what I need to do here. There was that moment I remember shaking James's hand on the Warner Brothers set, and I said, I think something like, I was born at this time, at this moment, to design this car. I'm so excited, and the opportunity couldn't have. You go through life as an artist, and you just only hope that you somehow the stars align for you to have an opportunity like this, and on top of that, to be able to fulfill that. So the audience members were very small. I try not to think about the significance of it, just think about in service to Matt's vision, because that's all it is, really, truly. And yeah, because you never know. Yeah,
for sure. And I'm curious, with Christopher Nolan's Tumblr, the backstory for the vehicle is actually incorporated into the movie itself. I'm wondering, when it comes to the design process, if you go almost like method, if you have a story in your head, like, how did this thing come together? Who made this thing? How did it come about? I'm wondering if that's a part of your design process or your approach. And if you do have that thought process, if you could share that with us.
Patrick, please.
Okay, man. So for me, the way it came really is when Zach told me about designing Batman, and as a production designer, I had other things to design, the Batcave and stuff like that. I felt I needed, and I always say that, I need to. Well, this is like the famous thing.
Love that.
But I felt
amazing
on every movies. I feel, for me as a designer, that I need to, if I have to define the aesthetic of a world, of a character, I have to find a prop or an object that's going to define it. So sometimes it is, maybe for Thor, it's the hammer. I don't know, something that starts it. And for Batman, to me, it was actually the Batmobile. It was something. When I say that, it sounds like I drew the Batmobile and here we go. And it wasn't that. But I felt that I need to find an aesthetic that defined him. And then from the car or from the props, everything sort of lines up. It's almost like you create an inhabitant of a place and then you define the place around it. So the car, the actor who's going to play the character, which is bolder, bigger, blah, blah, all that stuff. You need a car that can support a guy that's 6'4". You need a car that's big wheels. All that's defined by the character, but it's also one thing you start, and then from that time, the whole sort of like aesthetic of that character in the movie sort of comes. I could have we could have started from the costume of Batman. The timeline was different for costume. They didn't start as early. So the Batmobile became that. So for me, seriously, before I went to design the rest of the film, the car was very well advanced. We had worked with Ed Natividad, Kevin Ishioka, and Joe Hiora. We had developed the car in 3D. We had a car. And, Kevin McCarthy was starting to build. We needed the car early on. And so, that's what the car was for me. It was the first imprint of Batman. And after that, sort of everything followed that texture, that style.
That's incredible. Ash, what about your approach as far as backstory is concerned, and the narrative for the car?
I love these stories. It's nice to hear this, Patrick.
Yeah,
uh,
it's
yeah, I was for me as a designer, it's important to think about the character, and I for sure felt like, so once I asked a certain amount of questions from James in regards to the project, the wonderful thing that James did is he gave me just enough room to play to take on the method. He used words basically like to describe it, powerful and um, brawling and hand built and custom made and all these things. So having been, I'm hugely into cars, so I'm very much brought up in car culture, surrounded by Americana and cars and things like that. So I understand how cars work and how they function and all these kind of things. And so I kind of thought to myself, if I was Bruce, as because this was it was also needed to be more grounded in the sense where he built it himself and how would it look and stuff. So I started to think of myself as if I was Bruce, and if I was building this, and how would I build this, and what cars would I call upon, Detroit steel, Americana stuff, things from American history. What would I pull upon? And so I pulled upon quite a few interesting cars that would, I think, kind of add to it. And then I started to build this methodology. So one of the concepts I came up with as a design method was Bruce Wayne as a person is a shattered person due to trauma. Batman is basically his facade to cover up the pain. So Batman as the shield, basically the outer exposure, but inside he's this broken, shattered person. So it's got all these bars and all these kind of things trying to protect himself from feeling the pain. And so I've definitely thought a lot about the methodology, because it is not just a vehicle. I think a successful design actually takes on the body, encompasses the actual character itself, and becomes a character. And obviously, if you've seen the film, you know that the character that they gave the car was a whole different thing. So yeah, it was quite an experience. Yeah.
I've seen the movie many times, not just once. I don't know if you see this behind me right here, but I'll move that.
Yeah,
but there he is right there.
That's a different one. No, just kidding.
You're both bringing up something very interesting, which I wanted to discuss. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there's a real juxtaposition between your two takes on the character. Patrick, yours is his end of his sort of his run. He's a hardened, a broken man who's been doing this for decades, who's just exhausted. And Ash, yours is year 2, right? I mean, he's literally year 2.
Very nascent.
I'm really curious about if that in some way factored into your design approach as well, thinking about like how long he's been doing this for versus, his relative inexperience, and how much that incorporated into the process itself.
I mean, for me, I mean, again, I'm going back to the idea what the concept of the film is and where we're landing with the story. It is the Batman is a much more grounded story. I would say something that feels more realistic. And having someone like Ash, who's like a car designer, full-on car designer, do this, I think this is the perfect approach. Anyway, I think I'm living more in a fantasy world kind of thing. I mean, Justice League, Batman, it starts in a grounded world, but it goes a little bit in the place of monsters and things like that. And I think that my approach to this is a very organic approach. And it's amazing, again, to hear Ash talking about his process. Of course, I do pay attention to who the character is. I do actually talk to the director before I read the script. I like Zach to tell me what he thinks his character is. And with those tools, which are very limited, but the words are very important, he doesn't say too much. He says bold, he says big, he says things like this. I take those things, and as an organic designer, someone that designs things very organic this way, I can start charging ahead. I designed the shape before I designed the inside. And many years ago, I met with Ron Cobb, and I brought some of my early design and stuff. I wouldn't call them design drawing. And Ron Cobb looked at my drawing and says, "This is fun, but Patrick, you should design the inside before you design the outside. And obviously, this is a very grounded answer, very pertinent answers. You design what's inside to just, and then you dress it. My approach, and I can't stop it. This is the way I work. I will design the shape first. I look for shapes. And this is a difference between a true car designer and someone like me who's maybe just I design things. I will want the shape, I want the form to make sense for the character, but also be attractive, new, and do things different. That's kind of my thing. One of the things that the Batmobile had is the suspension, the fact that it could raise and lower. Those things were, again, very organic things. Now, there's a mechanical aspect of that came on later, working with the right people that just developed those elements. But for me, it starts by always design looking what the shadow of that thing is. If I see a Batmobile coming in a shadow, and Ash, yours has got a very drastic shape, and also it feels real. Mine has a shape very special as well, looks like a bat a little bit or something. To me, if the shape is already good, I want to start working with that. So those are, I don't know if it's a conventional way of designing things, but this is the way I work. And that's how I've been functioning through the process of designing the Batmobile and all the vehicles for the film.
Can I ask a quick question? I was always wondering, because you said it almost like a bat. Is that one of the reasons? I always wondered that the canopy, if you open them up, it's almost like two wings coming out. I mean,
yes, it's that. But I mean, not to go back to the whole design of the film, but everything in the Batcave was suspended. I wanted the stuff.
Right.
I didn't want anything touching the ground. It's meant to be suspended. The whole setup in the Batcave is suspended. Do you really see that when you watch the movie? Is this something that you pay attention to? Maybe not. But for me, that was the process, that there was remnants of bats everywhere, or the concept of a bat everywhere.
I love learning those little things.
Oh,
yeah, same.
yeah,
It's so
of
cool.
course. Yeah, this is true. Yeah, this is the bat cave. Is there's nothing touching the ground. All is suspended from the ceiling like a bat. How did I never see that? Thank you.
I left the chair on the ground. I thought it was getting a little goofy to make it like a swing chair. I just said, let's keep the chair on the ground.
Well, you've
It
been
is a
so many
badass
projects. You've been so many projects with Zach. So you have a second hand with him. There's obviously trust that's involved with that, and there's this kind of way of communicating, I'm sure, which is probably got to be amazing.
It's great, Ash. It's fantastic when the director. I don't know to what level the trust. It's just I do a sketch of a Batmobile and we go straight. This is not technically the proper way to approach something. You do a bunch of approaches of directions, and then we look in there and then we grow, we develop. But in this case, that was one sketch.
Wow.
No, but this is not. I don't think it talks about who I am and things. It's just like Ash is saying, when you know a director well, when you have that kind of connection with that person, I think you respond. Our job as a designer is to pull the vision of a director out, like we said before.
Translate
And
it.
it's a lot easier when you work with someone and you know that person. Then things come faster, quicker.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
Love that.
So Ash, I was wondering if you could address your take on the younger version of the character and how he's starting out, and how what did you think in your approach? Like, maybe things are slightly imperfect, maybe things look a little more put together or not as developed or as perfected as they would have been later on in his career, where he may have been when Patrick took on the Batmobile.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing needed to feel like he felt. The Batmobile is an extension of the character for this world, and it changes through each story, which I think is fantastic and fascinating. It's also interesting in American culture how this story has been continually shifted and changed over the years. What does it say about our culture and the importance of this trope, basically, this character that has this vengeance? It says a lot about us internally, I think, so, which is really interesting. But yeah, there was a lot of unfinished thought, basically. Like, there was trying to find a way to kind of, I mean, I never talked to Matt ever. This is an interesting difference between the process too. I never spoke to Matt directly. I only spoke with James, which is awesome. I mean, I feel like James really did an incredible job as a production designer on the film, and also just kind of managing me through the process. 'Cause I never really came into the studio either. I was just in my home office right here doing it completely as a satellite agent. So, which is also really interesting.
Oh, wow.
So there was a different relation basically, and speaking with him basically almost once a week kind of. And once I had submitted something that really kind of captured the essence of what Matt was after, I think that's when the conversations truly started to open up. And because I feel like Matt was searching for it, and because the film that he was making was character driven in the way that was kind of akin to films like Chinatown, and having watched Matt's other films and understanding how deep character themes kind of run, I was just kind of reverse engineering his process as I was going through it. And you just the will as a designer, you just find your way, I think, and either you find it or you don't. There's an alignment with your director or not, and thankfully at this time it was. And so I thought a lot about the character, and also knowing who was playing the role. I'm a big fan, and I think it was really amazing that this choice for casting, because I knew that he could do it, and I had seen Good Times and the other films that he was doing, and I knew that he was going to be able to pull it off with the gravity because he's an
Right.
incredible actor.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite films. Good Time is just like an incredible.
Yeah.
It's a tension build basically, yeah, and it's fantastic. And I love those directors too. I mean, Uncut Gems is a fantastic film, and all these
Softy.
things, yeah. And I felt like, I think that this is a really great choice. And Batman Year One as a comic is one of my all-time favorite Batmans, just because of the grounded nature of it. So
Right.
knowing that, thinking that, rereading that, touching that, understanding that, the groundedness of it, and then the youngness, the very flawed young early crime fighter, to me is so romantic and so beautiful and so unique. So pairing that with the car character, I thought was really important. So I'm also a huge Batman fan. So yeah, it was really it's a whole interesting thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you brought up Pattinson, who, by the way, I'm also a massive fan, and I think he's a really special actor. Patrick, I'm curious if when you got involved in the process, did you know that Ben Affleck was already involved? Was he already cast?
Yeah, very early on, I knew that. It's funny because I remember developing the proportions of the car and printing it on the wall to the place where we wanted it to be. And then we realized how small he was for Ben. We had to kind of double up everything. We had a headache to find those tires on the back. We found in Israel, they're actually tractor tires that we had to reshape. I mean, Dennis McCarthy had to shave those tires to make them work for the car. It was a fun development thing. Talking about this, it was an interesting thing that I didn't mention. I felt is when we designed the car, we built the car. It was quite clean cut and painted nicely and everything. One of the first things Zach said, and he said, we need to make sure that this car is beat up a bit. It's beat up. This thing's been out there for a while. We created pieces of the car that were replacement pieces, which are different colors. You see it, and you see it on the models we created. There's a couple of elements like that, and. It was interesting when we saw it in the museum before you came out, Ash, which definitely has got character and is being built and feels. A lot of the Batmobiles are quite clean looking. They're quite sharp and shiny. And so it was fun to have a director that just was pushing for the idea that he didn't buy this car yesterday. He doesn't wash it every day. He's got better things to do. And that was kind of the concept. And that's sort of like lines up with what would be next after what you've designed as your car that's already in the line of someone that's built it, fixing it, and it's not perfect. I mean, not perfect. It's not just pure beautiful lines.
Yeah, it's great. It's great that you bring that up, Patrick, because I think, weathering is it's so interesting that you bring that up because Yost actually had two versions of the 22 Batmobile. There was one that was the clean version, and there was the weathered version that has the mud on it and all the scrapes and all the different things. I went with the weathered version because I feel like it's a part of the character. But you're bringing up something really interesting, Patrick, is this notion of like the scratches and the dents and how, it's not even like an aesthetic choice necessarily. There's like something psychological about it. Like this is a man who's been through a lot.
It is the storytelling that, the way Ash talk about that you pay attention to the character. The character would not have a car that's pristine and beautiful. It has to be beat up a bit. It has to be fixed a couple of times. So yeah, I think that was very important for Zach. And it's funny because I hate to say it, but you're a little bit precious when you design the car and start painting it. And I was like, what? We have to make it dirty and crappy? And obviously, I don't know what was wrong with me, because obviously that was the way to go. And when I saw it beat up and just much more used, it was the way it was meant to be. So it's funny.
Yeah.
Very
One of the
protective.
things that people kept asking me is whether this was a mistake, the different color paint on your custom. Yeah, on your custom. What can you tell me what the 888 stands for? Because it's a reference to you, of course.
Okay, I'm a motorcycle guy. I raced motorcycles for many years, and I was racing Ducatis and stuff. And my friends were actually, that was Ed Natividad who decided to put my signature. It's not my signature, but PT means Patrick Tatoupolis on everything.
Yeah.
I would not dare doing this. Those guys did it. I just need to say it's not a big ego thing. And so we created that piece, and there was none of that on it. And they did that. The team did that together. So nobody will see it. It's cute. It's a signature. So that's where it came from. Yeah.
Well, we saw it.
I had the best team,
awesome.
team for this. Yeah, great people, amazing designers.
Yeah, this also must be said that these, as having a design is one thing, it's another to be executed at the level, and there's an army behind these things, which is so incredible. The COVID had happened right around when the design process was kind of taking way. So usually I'm more present on these things, especially a project this big, and I was not able to, which was a shame. But yeah, but I love the wear aspect, and that's proof also that's wonderful to have a director with a true voice and vision to their own. Because as designers, we do get precious with things. We get so wrapped up in it, as we should, because we become method. We think about it in a method format if we're truly executing at the level that we must do. And a director is to look above and say, I think it needs to be this because my character needs to do this. I'm already thinking about third act trouble and whatever it might be. And so I need to make sure that everything aligns to that logically, which is fantastic. And
100%.
we're all in support to the story and to the director's vision. Always.
Yeah.
So the '89 Batmobile is sort of like a Frankenstein vehicle. Chevy Impala, Honda Civic, Ferrari, all these different elements. I'm wondering if you guys could talk about whether you had any sort of like real world influences. Like I know Ash, a Dodge Challenger, is that right? Was a partial influence on the Batmobile. So can you guys talk about like your real world influences and your reference points?
Please, Patrick.
All right. So for me, the only thing I'd say is because of my influence to the original, to the '89 car. Like I said, I like World War II jet fighters. I like the Mustang. I like the Spitfire. I like those planes. I love the cockpit further back, and the reference to that in the cars is like the '70s, Corvette. So the fact that you're behind, the Tumbler was the opposite, a very much more modern approach to where the seating fits. A pilot like a Formula One, very much to the front of the vehicle. I wanted to go back to this because I had loved so much the original Batmobile, and because I love those airplanes, I wanted to put the pilot way back. So my influence, I would say, would be that. There would be World War II airplanes, and the Corvette maybe. Those are the two reference for the general line of the car. After that, I just have to say, the car is built with swing arms. Swing arms are what you have on a motorcycle that support the rear wheel of the bike with suspension. So those swing arms, it's basically the back wheel is supported by some sort of a metallic frame that where the suspension works. Swing arms today on the racing bikes have very special shapes. I wanted the car from the profile to look like swing arms of a motorcycle. So if you look on the side between the wheels, the two wheels, you got those two swing arms. They go to a central point. This is where the car raises and lowers. There's definitely motorcycle influence in there as well. This is kind of my thing. The seat, the tail looks like the rear seat of a superbike today. They're very narrow. So those are all the influence. I would say go back to the original Batmobile, not the original, the '89 Batmobile, the Corvette, motorcycles in the elements of aesthetic of the bikes. And that's kind of where I went with this. And then the Bat creature in there as well, and that's the combo of things that influenced me.
Yeah. So the swing arm thing, that's what this was influenced by the swing arm constraint. Yeah.
100%, and that was very important to me. Actually, so it's still part of the original sketch. I look at an elevation of the car because I wanted to have elements that reminds you of the back and the big tail in here. Again, if you look at motorcycle today, like the 1000 cc, those big 600, whatever,
Right.
that the seat is very raised on the back. It's very dynamic shape. They'll dive in the front. They have this kind of wedge shape, which I really wanted to see in a car. At least it sort of came almost naturally. But yeah, those elements are definitely based on motorcycles.
Cool.
Yeah, as a designer, you call upon what you know and what you're familiar with and what you're passionate about. Yeah,
100%.
yeah, that's what you have in your toolbox of inspiration, which is
You
cool.
write what you know.
Yeah, the swing arm rear is pretty cool. That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. The one of the critiques and criticisms that the Matt Reeves, the one that I designed, got was that it just looks like a car. But that's actually, ironically, the point of it. It's supposed to look like it's something familiar. So that was always a kind of a funny thing. The Dodge Charger, the 1970 Dodge Charger, that was the core. If you were to design and build a car in this world, a Matt Reeves world, is you don't reinvent the wheel. You take the wheel that exists and you add upon it. So the reason why I chose a Dodge Charger, because James and I had spoke pretty intimately about this. What car should we use as the base? And I thought, well, Corvette maybe, but Mustang maybe, of this era. We're talking 70s, late 60s era, American steel, Detroit steel, American muscle car heritage stuff. And I said, I think it needs to be a Dodge Charger, specifically because in a Dodge Charger, from the rear, you already have the cowl language. If you take the rear B pillar, I think it's what's the technical term. It's the rear term. The rear, it goes to the rear trunk. That rear trunk line, if you look at it from the top, if you look at it straight on, it is a Batman cowl, and it already does the language. You're always searching for the language ratio. Okay, how much does it have like this? How much does it have like that? How do I take this and bring it to the forwards? And so it was almost like taking this and then building a tank around it. And then one of the first renders concepts that I had done that Matt really responded positively to was a top-down shot with the engine exposed in the rear. One of my all-time favorite cars is a Ford GT40. It's the original. And the engine sits back there. It's a mid-engine, but the engine is this sole thing. And being such a lover of mid-engine cars in that era of racing, I wanted to do that. And so that was the first time I think Matt responded viscerally. And then this conversation started to happen. Oh, that's the heart of the beast. We're getting to somewhere. I think that he was looking for the theme, the core, the idea. The film Christine also came up as an inspiration too. A car that became, Stephen King's seminal film or book that translated. But yeah, it was like finding the monster within. So you see, that's the same shape from the Dodge Charger. I'm not a particular brand car guy. I love cars in general. I just love cars. I don't really choose a team, so Dodge or Chevy or anything like that. So I just was looking for the car that already had the beautiful shape, and this one had it. And like I said, see that those two lines that go along the side, that actually is naturally already designed into that car. And it was like, oh, this is already a Batmobile. It just needs to be completely reconsidered for the act of fighting crime and creating complete fear. So yeah.
Ash, I was when your car came out, I was so blown away with it. I tell you why, because there's another thing that actually is outside of what the car should be for the story or everything. It is important to do something new, fresh. And we could keep going into the Tumblr, Batmobile, blah. And when this car came out, it just broke the rules and went into a totally different direction. I think that's also important. It's not a game. You don't do this to be cool, but somehow it's great to surprise with those things, to just do something that takes you in a different place. Now, of course, the story led you there in some way, Ash, but to just go that direction was such a refreshing direction that you could make another monster car, another kind of creature car, but that just went to a totally different direction. I know the movie is also very different, but to me, as a designer, as an audience, I felt we needed that. We needed to recenter things and just look at it in a more grounded kind of way. I thought that was amazing. I have to say it. I'm not being nice.
Yeah. No, it's so kind of you. Having known each other, we a brief
Yeah,
history is Patrick hired me on working on Total Recall, like
yeah,
the beginning of my career in Hollywood. So it's like we've had some incredible time working
yeah.
on that film together. So it was actually incredibly ironic, and then being able to do this is quite surreal. You never know what's going to happen to you in life and where you're going to go. So, and then hearing your praise of it is very kind of you. And
No, it's very
yeah,
sincere. Very sincere, Ash. It's very sincere.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, it's really it's actually, you know, in praise of, if I can jump on the praise train also, I think what you both do is really, like we talked about, we alluded beforehand to how the Batmobile is ostensibly a character in the movies,
Mm,
and what the Batmobile does in your respective iterations does like a lot of work for giving people context. Where are we? Who is this type of person?
mm,
You know, what's the world like? You know what I mean?
mhm,
Like, Ash, you talk about Chinatown beforehand, and I think that
mm,
when you see this Batmobile, you see it instantly noir. You see like 70s, like Charles Bronson movies. Like
mm,
there's this language that comes immediately. You're like, oh, I've been here before. I used to vacation here. Excuse
mm.
me. So I'm familiar with what they're trying to do. Sorry about that.
Mm,
So I think, you know, what's so special about what you both have done is you've taken something that's for most people fairly innocuous, like the vehicle,
mm,
and you've literally made it into something that creates the atmosphere, the mood, the scene, the history. It's a very visual language, and I think that that's like supremely impressive.
mm. I mean, we're so honored and thankful to be attached to so many talented people. The moment that I also knew that Greg Fraser was shooting the film, I was blown away because he's my favorite cinematographer. So the irony that my favorite cinematographer would be filming this, and also I never read the script. I was not I didn't know anything. So
Hmm.
when I went and watched the film for the first time, because
Oh
COVID
wow.
had happened, I had no essence of anything. I've never even seen the car in reality.
Wow.
Yeah. So sitting there
Amazing.
in the theater, I was a true participant. I was a true audience member.
Well,
I had no
how
idea.
did you feel when that car? Because
Yeah.
that entrance of
The
that
entrance
car
is
is just.
insane. I was thinking to myself, we're about 30 minutes in and we haven't seen it. I'm really excited and curious, but at the same time, I'm enjoying the film experience itself because
Mhm.
I love Greg's work. I love Matt's work. I love what they're doing. I could see what they're doing. They're taking elements from Seven and they're taking elements from all these different beautiful films that I'm obviously inspired by. But when it came on, I had a full adrenaline rush and then I started crying.
Yeah.
It was like,
Oh,
yeah, it was truly.
beautiful.
And I always watch the films I work on with my wife always first. And I was just holding her hand and I was like full on, like, I can't
Mhm.
believe this is happening. Like I'm in some sort of simulation because I
Dude,
don't
that
really
What an
come from
entrance.
much. I come from, very humble beginnings and I just was kind of just an art nerd. Validating yourself as an artist is such a difficult thing because you're, as an artist, your value is what others say it is. And so going through this whole process and then this whole film industry process and then sitting there and yeah, it was very surreal. It was a very beautiful moment. It's one of those moments I'll cherish
Yeah.
indefinitely. Yeah. I'm so thankful and that James gave me that chance and Matt made such an incredible film and everybody involved. I'm just truly honored.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Ash is saying something which actually I completely relate to. Although I was lucky to be through the process of building the car, but in general, we do create aspect of a film. But when you see it on screen, it has gone to a different place. It's
Yeah.
gone. It's grown. There is so many people coming aside from obviously the director, but the post production, everything, the way the movie. If you haven't read the script, it's even worse. I do find myself often just like getting chills on things we have created, designed, because between designing and the final rendering, the way this thing is appearing, the way it becomes part of the story, it's that's still magic for us. I'm so glad you're saying that because
Mm.
for me it's the same thing.
I love that it happens for you, that you
Yeah,
still have it. Having
it,
so many films under your belt that you feel that sensational magic. That's
I do
cinema. That's why we do it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually really curious about that, Patrick. About you're still having that experience, even though you've been doing it for so long. It still has that connection to you.
Mm.
100%. I mean, I'm very passionate. I can see Ash the same. I'm very passionate about anything I do, and so when you're that passionate and you build, and then finally you lose contact with the piece, and then you see it again, then you got that. I don't know. I'm passionate about watching it as well. I mean, it's very special for me. You don't. I don't get tired of things. I'm ready to do a couple, a few more films, and I just want to create. The same way I'm sure Ash, you want to keep designing for as long as this is so much fun.
Well, yeah, we're the drug and the drug dealer. So we're
Exactly.
constantly feeding ourselves the drug. The drug is the unknown. It's finding it. It's the discovery. Yeah, when that happened, I was just like, "What in the hell, man?" Yeah,
Ash, I have to tell you, when this scene happens and I was in the movie theater, like I like got teary. Like
Ah,
and I didn't even have anything to do with the
visceral.
process. It is I remember seeing it. You talked about COVID. I think that this was fairly early on in our return to theaters, and I think that like
It's true.
when there are these big moments in the movies, they felt exponentially more emotional.
Yeah.
I remember the seats shaking when that car starts humming, and I remember
Sound
just
design is incredible.
and the
Yeah.
sound design is phenomenal. And I just remember this scene and its impact. You almost felt it like reverberations in your heart.
I couldn't believe that they had managed to
I?
do what they did, honestly, because I had nothing to do with any of this part. The planning, the cinematography, the added addition. Because shooting a car is very difficult.
Mhm.
It's not a thing that moves very well and fast, especially a car that's designed for cinema. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a different type of mechanism. Like like Patrick is talking about, like using tractor tires and these things. It takes a tremendous amount of force in order to achieve even a drift or a slide. There's so many things to think about, and how they managed to do this. And I've spoken to Greg about this as well. The pre-planning, the prep to do this in order to have, you look at films like Bullet, or you look at films like The French Connection, and all these kind of special automotive films that have this visceral feel to them. It's really hard to do that, and so I couldn't believe what I was watching, truly, because it could go either way. It could be like they really truly honored it, or they didn't, and they missed the mark. But man, did they home run this thing. It was just like, man.
Yeah.
Truly
Because
honored.
I just want to add, and Patrick, maybe you know this, being close to the Dutch, they are a very laid back but also serious folk. And so usually it's completely silent in movie theaters. So the first time I came to America, I watched a movie there and heard people participate. That was very new to me. But I watched this scene in the Netherlands, in the 2022 scene, and people cheered in the Netherlands. So, I mean, that's just amazing. I just wanted to share that.
And so both
That's-
your respective vehicles are fully functional. Is that accurate? And
Cool.
what was the chat? Were there challenges involved in getting those things to actually work and function? Because I know with the '89 Batmobile, it was very much so the case. I mean, that thing could have fallen apart at any second. So I'm curious about like that journey into making fully functional vehicles from things that just literally come from your brain.
Well, in my case, we had a drivable car, which was not doing all the tricks. It's very often the way it is. You have the trick car and you have the driving car. The trick car would raise on the suspension, although it could do that as the car was driving. The hero car would have the cockpit opening. All those things you need that are creating weight and needs more mechanics inside that just you don't want to necessarily reveal. So you have the driving one and you have the hero one, you would call, and the one when he steps in. So for us, the car was definitely practical. And because we use so much CG, like as you can see the early stuff here,
So cool.
we have a lot of CG in there that people were questioning: is the car real or is purely CG? And it's a little sad when
Yeah.
we know that this thing is definitely working. And thanks to Dennis McCarthy, was absolutely amazing.
Wow.
We had gone to a couple of car builders, and when I showed the design, some of the car builders said, we can make tires but different on the back if that's cool. Nobody was taking the challenge. And then he said, I will find those tires, the size you have it on the drawing. And this is why he went all the way to Israel to find that Israeli truck and brought the tires back and shaved them. Dennis was on a mission to give me the car I designed and not some sort of a hybrid between what's possible and not possible. Those guys are so special.
Wow.
Dennis was so amazing. So yeah, it is a real car. And
Yeah.
yeah, here you go. That's us testing it in the desert.
That's so impressive. It's so crazy because I can feel the essence of your design language there, but they find to manage it is like you said, it is quite sad. A lot of people had asked me, is it real or is it isn't? And is it
Yeah.
not? And it's like, no, it's definitely real. Which is a testament again. It's like it's films, these things don't have to exist. They only exist in society that when an abundance of greatness that we can
Yeah.
add to it. And
Right.
to do these things is to add and say, I'm going to chase this dream and we're going to make something special. And that's so cool that it's fully functional.
You
Yeah.
know, but that's the thing. Zach has an aesthetic that he has created since 300, which has
Mhm.
sometimes use those kind of elements that feel CG. It's part of his way of doing.
Yeah.
It's his aesthetic. And so when you dive, you put your car in elements like that. And yes, in fact, the car was CG in a few parts in the film.
Mhm.
But when you just live into this world where things feel like, a little bit different, then people quickly assume that the car would have to be CG as well, which is not the case. Yeah,
Mhm.
no. I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it now, and I can actually just say that to you guys.
Well, it's an honor to the engineers and the builders because that's a one-off tube chassis car, which is
Yeah,
that's not easy to do. They have to kind of basically print a blueprint of the idea of what it needs to be. And yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it's same for this. And again, as I can't speak to on set and all these kind of things because I wasn't involved with that, but you can see it here. I believe that there was 3 cars built, as Patrick was saying. There
More,
was
actually.
4. Was there 4 of them?
They did an electric version.
Yeah, electric
Well,
one.
I think, yeah, and then there were 2 that were actually fully functional for the jump.
Yeah.
And then maybe the 4th was just the
Close-ups.
most of the inside for close-ups and all that sort of thing. I'm not sure, but it's more than
Inserts.
3.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
and think about the budget and the time and the effort. That's another thing that's a beautiful thing about films and why it's important to still support cinema and everything around it is because it's supplying jobs for creative people to go and make dreams possible and things possible, which is also kind of a beautiful thing as well. Yeah, and it's fascinating. But the concept, I'd say the only thing that I would criticize of my own personal design, and it was my fault for doing it, is whenever you make a race car, you want center of gravity and everything to be as close and tight as possible. It creates a very balanced driving experience. If you have weight that's a little far off the axle or away from it, it creates an unbalanced experience for driving and it makes it very volatile in order to control. So the engine in mine, once they had seen where it was, they're like, "Oh, this is great. Make it bigger and push it further back." And I'm like, "But that's against you would put the engine closer to Bruce and you would keep the center of weight." But other than that, it was James was like, "What do you think? How does it function?" And I was like, "Oh, I think it would be really good if we had dual motors. So we had something that was potentially an electronic EV or something that would make it so that he could creep and do the detective thing and then turn on the anger if he needed to. And the dinosaur machine basically in the back,
Right.
twin turbo, V8, V10 to completely destroy everything around it and create ultimate fear." So I like the idea of this dichotomy of usage, basically this different settings, basically of the car. So it was so much fun. There's so much nerdy moments of just I think Patrick, you probably relate to this. Is like, how am I doing this? I feel like a child, and I'm an adult doing this kid thing, and I'm so excited and thankful.
Listen, I totally feel like a child 24/7. I mean, we haven't completely grown up when we do what we do, making monsters, making cars like this. But we have to remain a little bit like kids. Otherwise, we're not going to have the right energy to create those things, I think.
Yeah, innocent. Yeah, there's an
Yeah,
innocence to it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I do
Love
I
that.
do a great deal of thinking about your respective designs, and I see that a lot of people on the internet do that as well. I have 2 questions. My first question is, Ash, I noticed that yours is a 1-seater. Patrick, yours is a 2-seater. I'm sure that's intentional. I'm sure that's saying something about the character itself. I'm wondering if you've seen anything online that people have interpreted or taken from the vehicles that you may have not intentionally noticed, but in retrospect you realize, yeah, that's almost exactly, my subconscious was working there.
But for mine, the two seats, maybe there was a time where Robin was sitting next to him. We don't know. We still see, this concept.
Oh, yes, later. Yeah.
I love that.
We talk about that, in the Batcave. I had that specific spot where you could see that.
Absolutely.
So that was part of that. And another thing is, we did Justice League with the same car, but that was retrofitted to attack, the parademons, and at that point we had removed the seat and put a machine gun there. So we knew we were going to go there. And so we also tried to figure out ways that things would change. Now it's time to go to war. We removed that seat that's emotionally connected to Batman, but this time we have to put the machine to war. And so those were elements I'm so glad you got the two cars. But, because the way we developed it to make it more of a tank on the second pass was very special. But that's the reason for the two seats for us. That's how it started. Yeah, that's number two.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like a highly designed object. You can tell it's put together the same way, he's done it himself. It's not like he got a different car. So it still feels like it is his car. It's retrofitted.
He ripped it apart and modified it, took out one of the canopies, took out one of the chairs, put in a big ass gun. I love the Justice League version, by the way.
Yeah, me too. It's my favorite. Actually, I have a tendency to like the BVS more because it's sleek and simple. But it was fun to just go to that route. Everything is cut, by the bandsaw. It doesn't matter. It's done quickly to go to battle, and that was the approach.
Yeah. I was at a Warner Brothers event a couple of weeks ago where we put out all the Batmobiles, and so many people were just drawn to that badass Justice League Batmobile with all the guns and all that sort of thing. Especially the guys were drawn to that, and then. with Ash, with your car, people just kept looking at that engine in the back. Those just both are just eye catchers in that way. The one is with all the guns, the other one with that beautiful detailed engine. People did ask though that how did it work with a big engine in the back, and then there's something in the front that also lights up, and is there an engine there too? I was wondering about if that was part of your design or did that come later?
Yeah, I think the idea is to create a little bit of mystique, right? You as the audience member should not be on to knowing everything. And you should be able to see it for what it is, which is potentially a bit of a mystery. So answering all the questions, to answer your other question about have I seen anything online, and to be completely honest, I completely devoid myself being connected to the audience on that side, because once the art is then taken by the audience, it's no longer mine. Therefore, the opinions of that don't really belong to me. And that's when the art takes on a different form. In that beginning of designing something, it's very intimate. It's very small. It's with you, the designer, and yourself. And then it was with James, and then James with Matt. It was just between the three of us, basically. So that party was very small, and it was very intimate, and it was finding that thing. Once it went out to the world, I realized how big it was and how big of an impact. It was getting such extreme criticism, and it was getting such extreme praise, which I thought was great. You want your work to have polarizing effects.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was cool because it was like, also it was different. So people were off put by it. Oh, it just looks like a car, but that's the beauty of it. So anyways, what I've done personally, just for my own mental health, is that I don't I don't spend time analyzing what people have said. I'm excited that they have it, and that's then for them, the fans, to appreciate, understand, love, enjoy, whatever it might be. And I'm just here to be a part of it, and thankful to be a part of it.
This is really great also. Sorry. I just want to say that, you have to design the car for, if it's a small committee, the director, yourself, and the designer, you have to make yourself happy to start with. You have to feel good about it. You have to design. It's hard to say, but you should design for yourself. If you design for the audience, you are going to bastardize a design by packing things you think the audience is going to react to, and you're going to miss the point. I think, and this is why I totally agree with Ash about this, is we have to make ourselves happy, going in a direction we feel strong, and then it's gone. Then you have no control. I completely agree with that. I think it's very true.
Art history is for art historians, not for the artists
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Excellent quote. Excellent one.
So we have just like a couple more minutes left with you too, and I wanted to ask. So Patrick, you had an opportunity to work on a vehicle twice, which I don't know if it's common in your experience. I'm wondering if you can tell us how you approach things when you're coming around to it again. And Ash, part two to that question has got to be like, are you going to have that opportunity also?
You should. So for me, it was fun. It's like working with a toy. We had built a model of the car, and we're starting to rip it apart and say, "Hey, he needs a machine gun here." It's where it gets fun. Again, because it's not a redesign of the car; it's the same exact car. Cutting pieces out, putting things, and at that point, it's not so much about doing a concept piece of art in 3D, although you can. There's an aspect of putting things together immediately with having a model base and just starting to put pieces of form and just adding things and saying, no, he needs this, he's going to need something that shoots behind, blah, blah, all those things, and start packaging elements together as we start to feel good about the proportion, the balance, and we say, this is cool. The fact that it's asymmetrical, we like that. And then once we got those things together, the height felt right, then we drafted. Then we started to work in 3D and develop those elements. And we knew they had to be retrofitted to the car that was actually still here from BVS. So it was truly, that part was a very fun process, because it's like a kid playing with his Legos, Hey, it's almost that, and I love it.
Awesome.
I love it.
That's so cool that you had the chance to do that, to be able to kind of revisit the design, deconstruct it, add to it. And then you and Zach were able to kind of rethink about the character, adding on to the character, the patina of the story. That's so cool. Yeah, I love that. I hope to someday have a chance to, but if nothing else happens for me in that universe, I couldn't be more thankful and honored to have been a part of it, and truly blessed. And so it's I'm just truly, still to this day, it's one of those things that if my film career ended now, I'm thankful to have had the adventure and the journey that I have, and blessed to have been able to be a part of any of it. So yeah, super thankful.
Well, Ash, I'm pulling for you because I really want to see your take on the Batwing. So
oh yeah.
I'd love to see your practical approach to the Batwing.
Wow.
And for my last question, again, this has been so wonderful. I mean, it's just a genuine pleasure to talk to the two of you. I think for my final question is, I don't know if you had a chance to see the Jazz Inc. reproductions. I know, Patrick, you've seen the Jazz Inc. Ash, have you seen it?
I have. Yeah.
I just have to give credit to Yost because he does
incredible,
an obscene amount of research and analysis when it comes to recreating these spectacular designs. I'm just curious about like your impressions or your takeaways on seeing your designs in that scale and the level of detail.
Well, I've made a thing of me of keeping the creatures, like the things I've done for the movies. I've got the space where I've got my iRobot, Independence Day things. I like to keep those things because I love that stuff. Yeah. Batmobile was a little hard to get one of the real Batmobile in my house. What could be the next best thing? Come on. Okay, work on it. What could be the next thing is having a very accurate replica to be able to display. And, and it's just great because I can look at it. I can just, and I find the replicas amazing. I think that's fun. I mean,
same.
How do you say your name, Just? Because I've never called you live. How do you say it?
It's Yost.
Yost, exactly. No, I've said it wrong a couple of times. I apologize. Yost, your car, amazing. And you know how much I love them. I think we've dialogued together about this. This is amazing work. Yeah. It's for the designer to be able to just have those pieces, and they're like Ash is saying, they're great memories. If our career stops tomorrow, this would have been amazing.
Yeah.
I don't want to look like an old dude that wants to see his old toys and stuff, but that's very special to me to be able to look at it, revisit it. It's just amazing. So
truly
stunning work. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Ash. Wow.
You and your team have done it now. Yeah, I was a part of seeing one. I'd done a speaking event, and it was attached to that, and it was just, yeah, it was as, again, I don't know how to describe it. I think I'd like to live in a bit of a denial with it. I'll be going through a store, and then I'll see the car in the store in a common place, and yeah, there we are. Yeah, exactly. And this is the first time that I've actually seen any car representation of it, because I've never, as I mentioned, I've never seen the original, so I haven't seen their actual car that was on the film due to COVID and all those kind of things. But yeah, it was truly incredible, and it was really, I felt truly like proud of you guys. It was weird. I was like, I'm so proud that you spend the time to actually like dissect this design, and I'm so honored and thankful that you did that. And I'm also thankful and honored that somebody is out there that encourages this behavior, that there's enough fans to support this nerdy habit that we have, which is so fantastic. And I'm just truly honored, and the work is stunning. It's really, I'm a you can't see it because it's a webcam, but I'm a fan of collecting nerdy things as well. Again, I'm just a child in an adult's body. And I love that. I love the craft and the effort that somebody, because it's a huge gap to go from digital, then translating it to physical. And it's a huge gap. It takes a tremendous amount of energy to really understand, research, and get the forms right. And yeah, when I saw it, I was just like, I'm a bit speechless, honestly. Yeah. It's wonderful work. Yeah.
Well, we were super. Oh, I do have one quick question for you, Ash. If you can break the controversial debate within the collecting community, do you prefer the weathered version or the clean version?
Oh yeah, always weathered version. I feel like it matches. Yes. Yeah.
From the designer himself. There we go.
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Patrick and Ash, this has been an exceptional experience. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
We value all your contributions to the world of cinema and to pop culture. It's just an invaluable imprint that you've left on our collective fandom. So thanks for being a part of it, and thanks for being a part of this.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. It's been a treat. And Ash, so good to see you again. We need to connect.
Please.
We have to do it.
You have my email. Please send me email. I don't know if you have the same email, but I'm going to send you an email right now. So
Great. I love networking. I love
Yeah.
Just very nice seeing you, and looking forward to connect again.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Thank you again. My insane pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yost, if you want to just stand for a second. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. All the best to you and everybody.
You too. And get some sleep.
Yes, eventually. Ciao.
All right.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye. All right.
That was insane. Wow.
Yeah, it was a good interview, right? It was a good chat.
Yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.